Good morning, everyone. I'm Jan Erickson from Stepping Aside, and welcome to Somewhat Daily Tarot and Rune for the 12th day of February 2019. Well, yesterday's reading sort of had the interpretation of maybe the shutdown was ending. Not the shutdown, but the deal to avoid another shutdown could be made. I'm still in that shutdown mode. Looks like maybe that's going to happen. So if he doesn't, throw a wrench into the whole thing, he's also talking, I guess, about taking disaster relief money from California and Puerto Rico and using that money to build his ever-loving wall, which won't happen. So it'll just be another dance, just like it's always been. But maybe they won't shut the government down at least, so that'll be positive. Not out of the woods, though. So anyhow, it's the 12th day, so it's a 3 numerology. So mind, body, spirit, influencing in harmony. Maybe, it's a catalytic number, triplicity. That's where we get the mind, body, spirit business and all that. But yeah, it's also Tuesday, so a Mars energy day. So it's going to really align with the whole catalytic energy thing of 3. So if you need to get something done today might be a good day to do it. It's about if you're working magic, it could be something involving passion. But here's the other thing. The downside of Mars energy is there's impulse control issues. So maybe you want to avoid doing things that maybe hurt you in the long run, So maybe think before you look, before you leap, think before you speak. So anyhow, Mars energy is interesting. It can either work for you or against you. So it looks like maybe the storm is going to go away. Everything's melting out there now. All the snow's melting. It's going to be in the 40s here today. So maybe the great deluge is over. But they're saying not necessarily. We could have maybe another week of it being up and down. But so far, maybe we can get back to spring coming a little early on the high desert. That would be nice. I just love to get out in the garden early. And around here, it's like you don't dare plant beans until I think it's either I think I've either determined it to be the first weekend of June or not before June 6th. Because if you do, it's going to frost. We can get, seriously, during the summertime here, we could have everything happen in one day. We could have snow, we could have hail, we could have ground striking lightning. We could have, 100-degree heat. And this could all happen in a 24-hour period in Central Oregon. It's just the freakiest thing. I remember a doctor one time at one of the local clinics said that he was driving to work one day, and he's driving along the road that the clinic's on, and he sees this woman out in her garden, and she's in her bathrobe and her jammies and all that, nightgown. And she's in tears because it was like July. There was a frost, and it took everything. She didn't cover, she didn't prepare for it. She just didn't know. She was new here. And she didn't understand yet what gardening is like here. So, you really, it's anyone's guess, really. So you have to plan, you have to cover, you have to water. You have to do all these amazing things just to save your plants and this was in July, so you just never know. So he stopped, drove in. She wasn't one of his patients or anything, but, everybody knew who he was. He's a real tall guy, I think he's the coroner here now or something. But anyway, everyone knew him. And so he just drove in and he's like, "What's up?" And so she's sharing, she's showing him, so. There used to be a really small town feel to this place, not so much anymore, but it's still not that big of a place anyway where I live. but still changed a little bit. So let's go ahead and count 13 and see what we have for today. Let's see if we can get anything else that might yield some insights as to what's going to happen. I don't normally do that. I'm more about influences, but I don't know. I just had this feeling like, hey, maybe something's going to break through yesterday. So anyhow. If you haven't been here before, thanks for coming. Welcome. Click subscribe. I'd love you to do that. If you have, then you know that my method is to count 13 cards and take the 13th card. 13 figures prominently in my life. I was born on October 13th. I was ill for 13 years. Lots of 13s in my life, right? I had a bunch of relatives that were Knights Templar, and of course, October 13th, 1307. Either was the day the killings began of them, or that was the day the edict to kill them was issued. I don't know which, but I always get confused on that. But 13 is there within my ancestry. It's just everywhere. So I just count 13 for this purposes of this YouTube thing. I just count 13 and take the 13th card. So that's what I do. You don't have to do that, though. That's just my process. So anyhow, we have, and we've seen this one before, we have the Two of Pentacles. You see the ship, there's a couple of boats out there on the water. It's real wavy. It's real choppy water, you know. So lots of emotional things going on in the background of what's happening. So there could be some emotions about this whole juggling business. Two is about balance. But here you've got, you know, with Pentacles, you're looking at the mundane aspects of life, the physical manifestation of life. So you're looking at finances, just the day-to-day doings of life, really. And so here, you know, the juggler here is trying to, it's like the eternal juggling of life, the eternal juggling that we have to do during our time in form and time in the body. So, because you can see the lemniscate right there. So there's no end to that juggling, is there? We're always doing it in one fashion or another, either this or that, making a choice. But this has to do with something that's foundational and maybe a little emotional, that we feel maybe a little emotional about it. Let's draw another card and see if there's anything more we can add to this. I love his hat. There's rumors that the, I can't think of their name now, but they did a set of cards, a set of tarot cards for them. It was a king and queen. It's not the Medicis. It's the Diesti family. That's what it is. The Diesti family. And I think they're from Italy, somewhere in there. Anyhow, they did on the anniversary of their 10th wedding anniversary, they commissioned this artist, local artist, a famous artist actually, to do a set of tarot cards for them. And they released it a few years back, and I don't know, maybe they re-released it or something, I don't know, but they redid them or something. Anyhow, I got a hold of a set of them because I'm related to these people. The funny thing is, and I looked on the cards just to see, they talk about in the UFO community, they talk about, you know, how we're related to, you know, the ET races that were here, genetically manipulating us. And of course, they use their own DNA in that process. So of course, you know, we're not, you know, the whole idea of being human is you know, we talk about the America being the melting pot. Well, the very body is the melting pot, because gosh only knows what we all are, right? You know, how many species that are actually contributed to our DNA. But the Diesti family, rumor has it, is a strong, has a strong amount, or a high amount of that, because their heads were elongated, rumor has it. And you look at some of the pictures of them, and you can kind of see that either they're wearing a hat or they've got the extended hair and all of that. So, of course, they all believe that the Diesti family was, you know, they're Merovingian. And so all of that is supposedly very, very heavy on the genetics of extraterrestrials that were here back then. So anyhow, when I see this hat, I think, oh, I wonder if he's a deesty. You know, is he a reptilian, or is he one of those with the elongated skulls that we see? So anyhow, I thought that was hilarious. I had already bought the cards, right? And I had seen that from my aunt. I always check. I always go on to ancestry.com because I have an account, and I always check to see, okay, is this person in my ancestry? Sure enough, they were. You know, and some of it, because I'm looking at the name, I'm thinking this is familiar. So I looked, and they were there. And I don't know if they're grandparents or if they're aunts and uncles or what they are. I don't remember now, but they're in the direct line, you know. And then I don't know, maybe a couple years later, I heard that whole idea that someone was positing the notion that in fact the Diestes had some misshapen heads to them that were more elongated. So I don't know. That's kind of an odd thing. A little bit of trivia from the UFO side of me. I just thought that was funny. And I look at the cards, you know, and there's one of her, the woman, that is just you can't tell. It just looks a little bigger. It doesn't look as elongated as one picture I saw, though. And that was like a painting that was done of her, and you can really see it there, that it's prominent, and it leaves you wondering, you know. So this is the Four of Pentacles, so we're going to stay within that. And you can see we've gone to 2 to 4. So again, we're talking about financial issues today, and that we're going to be juggling something. Here you have the king, which could be the king, or it could be just you're the authority in your life and you're the one making the financial decisions. He's trying to hang on to stuff, you know, because he's got all of that in the background. He's got the kingdom in the background. So either his back is to it and he's not paying attention and he's being miserly, or he's trying to be as responsible as he can. And I sort of let another card decide which focus that this takes. Is this all about him, or is he simply trying to hang on to the wealth so that it can be there for the kingdom when it needs it, so it's well prepared for the future? So is that what's going on? If it weren't for the fact that I read that Donald wants to take the money from Puerto Rico and California disasters and put it onto the wall, that could be a form of juggling. Okay. With a lot of emotion in the background about it all. Yeah, that could be juggling. You see? Is he going to juggle? Is he going to take disaster relief money and go and put it to something that doesn't need to happen, thus taking away whatever security that these people need in their time of need, you know, when they've gone through? I mean, California, the fires were horrible. I mean, entire town was gone, you know. You're going to take their money away that they need, to the FEMA money, to help them to get through all of this, to get them to rebuild and to get them to where they have a place they can live. You know, I mean, businesses were lost, and he's going to juggle the money somewhere else. See, that's what you've got here, don't you? So maybe this does. Maybe this is just about your personal life and you've got some juggling you need to do. It's just something we all have to do. You know, you have a bill that comes due or something, or an expense that's unforeseen. Maybe you've got to juggle some things around, you know. Hopefully you've got the ability to do that. A lot of people don't. I read a statistic that said that most people, the average American, does not have $400 sitting around that they, in case there's a $400, you know, emergency. But they don't even have that. That's why the shutdown was such a dangerous thing to do to people in this country. Well, yeah, I think this probably does have something to do with him, because I just drew the Emperor. And again, another 4. But you see how You see how he's not looking at us directly in the eye. He's kind of looking to the right, his right, our left, and a little bit to the ground. So to the right and a little down. So he's just not really looking, is he, at us? Well, the emperor, can either be benevolent or he can be ill-dignified and not be benevolent at all. He can be like this. He can be miserly. So I suspect that either some really big decisions are happening for us in our lives today, and we need to make a decision. I had one earlier made for me, which actually I was going to make myself, but uh, uh, I don't like to pay more than I owe, and a business that I was doing business with decided that that's how they do business. They just overcharge you and then reimburse. Well, no, and I'm not going to do that. So I then became someone undesirable to do business with. So they suggested I go somewhere else. They refunded my money and they suggested I go somewhere else. It's like, well, yeah, you think? They didn't know that's what I was going to do. Look, I'm tired of being ripped off. I know most people are. And for whatever reason, some businesses, they think that they can do that. And I don't understand it. And I don't understand why they would think they can. But when the actual amount that you're supposed to pay is actually can be known and they choose not to do that, they choose instead to overcharge, well, there's something wrong with that. So that's what happened to me. And instead of calling them this morning like I intended and saying, let's take a step back and let's make sure we know what all this is going to be before we go any further, they call me and say, bye. I don't know. I would think maybe an apology and let's figure out a way to do this so that we don't overcharge you might have been the better conversation to have. But, still, I think they understand that when you do that to someone, they get pretty angry. And I did. And even though I controlled myself, I still, said what I needed to say. And now I have to go find somebody else to do business with. So that's fine, which is what I was going to do anyway. Look, if they're going to overcharge you, do you really want to try to find a way to work it out? No. But I had some things to do there, so that I wanted to do some specific business with them, and they could do it, but not if they're going to do that. So, but here, when you talk about pentacles, you're talking about money, and you're talking about our security, our financial security. So whether you have to make a decision about something, maybe something big has come up with the emperor, that's kind of a big energy. So you see that with this, and maybe, it's like, oh boy, I got to take a look at my finances, and I've got to make a decision, and I'm having to juggle some things maybe to do that. On the other hand, if this is still in keeping with what's happening in our country, if this is something greater than that, then what you have is the emperor who's not thinking right and who wants to do things that benefit him but don't necessarily benefit anyone else. Kind of the same situation I was dealing with that got resolved this morning. uh, I don't know. I pulled Issa, the 11th rune of the Elder Futhark, 11 being the master number for illumination. So the thing about Issa too is that it can be used magically to halt forces, to bring things to a close, to align in source presence. So it's a really good rune for trance work. Because you can look at it and just get, at least I do, I look at it and I just get that feeling of alignment and peace. If you are feeling out of sorts and you're feeling emotional and you're feeling like you're going to overreact or whatever, if they're getting away from you, then you can chant Issa quietly to yourself, silently, to feel calm. Same with Birkenau. I know we've talked about that before. It's a wonderful rune to use in a bind rune. It just sort of holds ego awareness together, aligns ego with spirit. So hopefully, whatever this is that we're needing to do today, hopefully, ego will not be informing that process. Although I think in my case, it did. Um, Again, see the bigger picture, see a way forward in unity, in alignment with one another. But if not, then you're going to have to stand in your own power and say, no, this is not okay with me, and then just be prepared for whatever they do. Either it will work out, either way, it works out in your favor. You're either going to have a better experience at that place that you're doing business with, or you're going to go find someplace else that you can do that at. And that's really, for me, I was juggling this whole thing. I've been thinking about it, all weekend long. What do I do? And the knee-jerk reaction is just to call them up and say, you know what, I don't like this and I don't think I want to do business anymore. And please cancel, whatever we've got going here. But I didn't do that. I tried to find a way forward together, but that wasn't possible. And so my juggling resulted in a sense, that's decision being taken away from me, but not because it simply reinforced the decision I was going to make anyway. So, but it's interesting because both parties were juggling, weren't we? What are they going to do? What am I going to do? So before I go and I do something, like see a lawyer or whatever, get rid of her, So you see, sometimes, you make a decision that maybe in the beginning part of the whole thing seems to make the most sense. Later on, maybe, it reflects a decision that maybe shows a lack of understanding, maybe, of the bigger picture. If it's going to make you do something that doesn't make any sense. So anyhow, as far as society is going, as far as our country is going, the same sort of thing. You've got the committee that's juggling. They've supposedly come to an agreement. It has to be run by him so that he can say yay or nay. And if he says yes, well, okay, but he still wants to build the wall anyway. And so there will be a lot of juggling back and forth in court and all of that to keep the disaster relief funds flowing to the areas that need it and not to a border wall that does not. So I suspect that because of what's going on here, I think we have the same person. And I think that the juggling is being done by everyone to try to appease this guy. And I think that, we have 2 4 cards here, so there's synchronicity there with a decision on the 2. And then we're aligning to make that decision. I just think that there has to be, we can think about our immediate needs when making decisions, and sometimes we have to do that, but I think it makes sense to think about the greater picture, before making those decisions. Sometimes we might, like I said, in the case of what I was dealing with, that particular business, their decision to part company with me after saying, yeah, you guys have to refund my money, you can't do this, I'm not okay with that. Their decision to part company with me, even though that might serve them today, as they continue to do this with people, because I know I can't be the only one, they said it was a policy, so obviously they do this. So, but the more they do, how will that serve them in the future? Eventually there are going to be, if there haven't been already, there are going to be people that say the same thing I've said. And I'm sure there have been. So how do you, I guess in terms of a business, wouldn't you want to think about that broader impact maybe? So the same thing here, as they're trying to make a decision, trying to appease this guy, they have to figure out a way to do this in a way that's workable, that makes sense. Do you want to spend your money in a way that doesn't make sense to you? Would you, we make these choices when we decide what grocery store to go to. I have one that, yeah, they got some stuff I like, but I mean, it's going to cost me at least $20 more to buy the same stuff there I can buy somewhere else. So now, I suppose if I'm really flush with cash, maybe I don't care. But for most of us, that's not the case. And so, you think about these kinds of things all the time. How can I best manage my money? And so I just find it fascinating, that's basically what the conversation is right now in our government. How are we going to spend our money in a way that makes sense? And I don't know. Looks like I'm getting messages on Facebook. I don't know. You have to think about the bigger picture and how all of and how the decision that you make going forward, how does that affect all of that? And so if you're having to juggle something, in your personal life today, that's financial in nature, or that's ultimately going to be financial in nature, because isn't everything really? It all goes down to money. I guess my idea then is to just pull in, align, find that inner still point, and try to let higher self inform all of this so that you make the best decision possible going forward. I sort of just, in my situation, I already had decided that it's either going to be this way or it's going to be that way. So I tried to send the intention I would like to work this out, knowing probably in my heart that wasn't going to happen. But, I tried. So that didn't work out. So now I get to make another decision. So do they. So if you're experiencing that in life, don't allow a lot of emotion to it. Just make it very about either or. I'm either going to do this or I'm going to do that. Don't attach emotion to it, and then it just makes the whole process a lot easier. We don't have to go and continue to do business with somebody long term. If you're not happy, just go. It just makes the most sense. And if you can find a way forward, that's awesome. But if not, then there's always other places that are out there that you can do business with. So there's that. So if you're experiencing something like I am, just, be dispassionate in your decision making. Just look at how does this benefit me? How does this not benefit me? And then decide which you want to do. And just own that. And, it just is what it is. In my case, the situation drove the decision I made. And apparently, they decided to do one that didn't align with what I wanted to try to do. And that's okay. They can do that. But I don't know. Should they have? So anyhow. So we have the Four of Pentacles then. The Four is the Emperor, and we have the Two of Pentacles. So we're juggling something, and decisions need to be made of a financial nature. If we're the one having to do it, we're going to think about how much what we have to work with, and whether or not that's even possible. And we're going to have to take the authority within to make the decision. If we have to juggle finances to do it, we might have to do that. So in any event, allow Spirit to inform that process, and it should work out the way you need it to, hopefully. Money issues are tough, and we got to do what we got to do, So in any event, well, that's cool. Thanks so much for coming by. Check out the blog, Stepping Aside at I'mSteppingAside.com. I guess a lunar transit will probably go up either today. No, I did one yesterday. Well, maybe it goes up today. I'll have to look. I don't know if I have to write today or not. Maybe I do. So I'll either put one up today or tomorrow. Anyhow, maybe it is tonight. I have to do it. Anyhow, be good to yourself. Be good to one another. We'll see you tomorrow, and blessed be.